Kick it off. So thanks again, everybody, for joining this webinar with Embark and Miles Collins, who is going to be chatting a little bit about how Embark has adopted AI, Gen AI in particular, and all the success stories that they've had in and around their use over the past year-ish. Um, Prior to us getting going, just a couple of housekeeping things really quick. So first and foremost, this webinar will be recorded. So after the webinar is over, we'll package that up and send that over to you guys. So you do not have to take aggressive notes as we're going through this webinar. You will have a full recording of this. Second thing is that we have a Q&A enabled via the Zoom chat here. So you might have just seen Doyle from the LVEX team posting inside of that chat. Feel free, as we're walking through the different slides in this webinar, we're discussing different things, to post questions, to post any comments there. We'll address those live. We will probably save a few minutes at the very end here for just general Q&A, but we're happy to answer those live as those pop up. So feel free to use that. And then finally, we probably will give you guys back a little time at the end here. We think that this isn't going to run the full hour. So hopefully we give you enough time to go use the bathroom, get a coffee, something for a break in your day here. So with that said, let's get going. So again, welcome to Miles, who's going to be talking about Embark, one of the fastest growing consultancies in the world right now, and how they've adopted Gen AI and done that in a really successful way. So the agenda for today is we're going to talk about Embark. Miles is going to give a little bit of an example about who they are, why they decided they needed to embrace Gen AI. We'll switch over to LVEX very quickly to talk a little bit more about what we do, who we are, for anybody that doesn't know. We'll go into really walking through how Embark has brought AI to the masses of the team. And then we're going to go into a live demo. So Miles is going to demo a couple of different apps that are used at Embark without any sharing any sensitive data, and really talk about how these have been impactful for Embark. And then we'll finish up with a general Q&A. But like I said, feel free to ask questions as we move through this webinar here. So with that said, let's carry on. So Miles, I'll pass it over to you. Do you want to give like a quick intro about yourself, what you do at Embark, and then talk about Embark? You guys are pretty unique, and for anybody that doesn't know what you do, I think it's a great opportunity to share kind of how Embark approaches work, consulting, and everything in between.
Yeah, thanks, Hashim. So I'm Miles Collins. I'm a senior director here at Embark, and I lead our generative AI practice. And Embark is first and foremost kind of how we got our foot in the industry. Is started out as a finance and accounting advisory firm, and then from there we started growing into some other spaces and built out a business transformation practice to go with that. Complementary to our finance and accounting advisory, we have our deal team that handles the whole evolution of working through transactions and a lot of the technical accounting that goes along with that. And we also have some solutions and offerings within those to help with M&A, the full life cycle of that, as well as the post integration and doing data analytics. And then we have some fractional leadership roles that we also offer up to some of our clients that are in need of that. And so Embark is about 12 years old now, about 650 consultants. Embark, one of the reasons that we've grown like a weed is that we bring a different approach to our culture. Embark, we recruit from a lot of the big four, and we recruit a lot of consultants from other great firms, but we take a little bit different approach in terms of how we manage and how we live day to day within the firm and delivering for our clients. And our philosophy is that if our people are really well cared for and they're content and happy, that they will do amazing work for our clients, and the cycle will perpetuate itself. And so far it has. Over the last 6 years, 4 of those years, we've doubled in revenue and continuing to grow really well. And so AI, that's kind of one of the reasons that we needed to look at some solutions that would help us is to kind of support the growth and maturation of the firm. And so, Shasheen, to kind of expand on your initial question, one
Yep.
of the things that we really dove into with this was just looking at some of the problems that we had, and one of those was scale and figuring out how to bring solutions, bring projects to our clients at a greater and greater clip. And for a long time, the solution to that over the years was hiring more people.
Yep.
And at some point, we started to ask the question, can we continue to grow and serve our clients really well and in a consistent fashion with the same expertise, the same quality that we've had, but without hiring the same number of headcount that we've needed in the past? And that's really what led us down this journey.
That's amazing. Just like a quick follow up there. Um, the culture that you have, you talked about, happy employees makes happy consulting clients. And obviously that's been a huge boon to your business. Is there any kind of overlap that you see with kind of Gen AI and how that fits with the overarching culture of Embark?
Yeah, so Embark's had a very much a startup feel for a long time, just by the sheer nature of our speed and our growth. And being able to put these modern tools in the hands of our consultants, I think further perpetuates that. It further perpetuates the creativity and the fun nature of being able to do your job day to day. This is a tool that any company that does not adopt, they're going to be left in the dust. They are going to struggle in the market. But this is also a tool that is fun to work with. It's interesting, it's engaging, it opens up limitless capabilities for our consultants. So for us to provide a solution, a tool that we can deploy to the whole firm like generative AI, it further helps care for our people and giving them access to things that are going to help them do their job really well and do their job in a timely fashion.
Amazing. So let's get into a little bit of the details around the case study that we did with you guys. Miles, I'll really let you drive this. I know we'll dive deeper into the specific apps, but maybe talk about the broad strokes around going way back when, prior to using LVEX, really the kind of impetus. You talked a little bit about how you wanted to help with the scale and the growth of the company, but what was the overarching impetus for kind of seeking out an AI platform and then carrying that through to a plan to like actually integrate it with the employees and then have that drive value for Embark?
Yeah. So I would say that this all started with our founder, Paul Allen, who is really forward thinking in terms of looking at how the industry is shaping the winds that are pushing it in different directions. And he really set the tone of encouraging and really driving the adoption of AI within the firm. And so from there, our CIO led the charge to say, all right, well, what should that look like? What kind of tools should we look at adopting? How would we get the most bang for our buck in terms of getting a tool in here that's going to be easy to implement, easy to train and adopt across the user base? And so, with that in mind, we took that and conversations started, and we ultimately landed on LVEX as our tool. But through those conversations, ultimately, the big driver there was just recognizing that the industry is changing, that all of our competitors are going to adopt this technology sooner or later, that clients are going to expect a certain amount of quality and speed as these tools become more and more readily available, and that we needed to make sure that we were preparing for the future and leading that charge as much as possible. So once we started looking at tools, then ultimately we sat down to think about that internally. And what we did was we created a steering committee, an AI steering committee, internal to the firm. And that included myself, our CIO, his chief of staff, and a few others. And that's where we really started sitting down to think about, what does this look like for most of our employees? What does this look like between the different practice lines? What does this look like for some of our internal operations team members? And started having some specific conversations with each of those groups to figure out, how would you utilize this? How could this actually give you some time back in your day? How could this enable you to do things that you were not able to do before? And what we did through that was essentially identify champions. And through figuring out who those people were across the firm that were excited about this, that could put on their creative hat and start thinking how they and their teams would utilize this, we started finding those people that would help us drive the excitement around bringing this tool in.
Yeah, just around
And
that
with,
really
yeah,
quickly, how did you find those people? What did you do to like find, because like it's hard to do that when you have 700 plus consultants. Was it a mix of like consultants plus like other people that were helping around internal process? Was it purely consultants? Just how did you go about the process of saying these are the people we want to be kind of cheerleading the efforts here?
yeah. What we did was we kind of hit the problem from all sides, all angles that we could. So we sent out mass communications to the firm and had leadership reach out from a top down. We also did a grassroots effort where myself and others were just randomly reaching out to consultants that we thought, just based on our own personal relationships, might be a good fit, and just checking in with people to figure out who's excited about this stuff, who's already playing with it in their free time. And between those two, coming from our grassroots effort and talking with leadership, we started to identify those people, because it was really apparent early on who's excited about this stuff, who's tinkering with it at night versus who doesn't think that this has a role in their daily job.
Super helpful. So then once you had those cheerleaders, those champions of AI, what next?
Yeah. So once we found those people, the biggest and most important piece with AI, no matter how you're deploying it or what you're trying to deploying it for, is coming up with great use cases.
Yep.
So knowing exactly how you're going to use it and how it's going to impact your business in a positive way is really important. And what we wanted there was some quick wins. So we needed some different use cases that were going to be really easy for us to set up and implement and go demo to other people in the firm, that were highly relatable, highly useful. And so we focused on those. We focused on finding some different examples of applications that we could build that were Gen AI based with LBX, that would help large majorities of the firm. And with that, we then started doing demos. We then started putting out some videos. We started announcing it in different market meetings that we were having, just to provide as much awareness and as much excitement around the tool and what it was capable of as possible.
Yeah, and we'll go through kind of like what that adoption curve looks like in a little bit here, but that's super helpful. Um, let's like talk about some of these stats here because they're pretty impressive, and I want to understand what that means for you guys. So the first one is 72% adoption by consultants who now use AI to work faster every single day. What does adoption look like for consultants at Embark?
Yeah, so we've rolled this out to a good majority of the firm. And what that's looked like so far is the folks that have showed interest, the folks that have wanted to get involved, that means actually setting them up on the platform, which is really easy based on how we have it set up for single sign on. But we get those folks set up, and then we provide some basic references, training materials, things like that. And so the folks that we've rolled it out to so far, a large majority of those folks are what I'd call a repeat customer. They're coming and logging into the platform on a regular basis, and they're actually using it to do their job. And whether they've started to build a lot of custom apps for themselves, or they're just prompt engineering inside the tool, that 72%, that is of the consultants that we've ultimately rolled it out to.
That's amazing. And we'll get into like what an AI apps is specifically with what Embark does when we do the demo. I know the 500 plus is kind of like total. How many of those are like purpose built apps, Smile? Miles?
Yeah, so we've got a little over 300 purpose-built apps. The other 200 are pretty generic apps. Some of those tie to personal apps that each of our users have. Some of those are generic apps that are designed more to be a vanilla experience with any one of the popular Gen AI models. And
Yep.
then those 300 purpose built, those are apps that our consultants have sat down and thought about. And they said, hey, I've got this task that I do on a daily or weekly basis that I could do better if I incorporated AI into it.
Cool. And then the last thing I want to get into is really you. The quote you have is you feel like you've gotten a few hours back in your day. What does that mean for you? And then how do you see that projected across the team?
Yeah. So for me, a lot of what I do is very client focused from a scoping and sales perspective, helping clients understand how we can take these tools, how we can curate them, and ultimately deliver something in a project. So I lean on it a lot to make sense and simplify the mass amount of information that I usually have. So thinking about meeting notes from scoping calls with our clients, it might even be just a full on transcript
Yep.
everything that everyone in the meeting said and being able to run that through to say, okay, give me the key pain points that the client is feeling right now that they want to solve for. What are their biggest objectives right now? Did we maybe miss something in the conversation? And being able to use Gen AI to quickly curate that and pull together something that is going to uh, kind of create a memorial of everything that the client is trying to accomplish to make sure that we're hitting that as we put together whatever our solution might be for them. I also use it to do data analysis, being able to put raw exports of things that we have in there to say, okay, I need to kind of understand some trends that may be happening here, or give me some quick statistics. And it allows me to do that without having to go spend a large amount of time in Excel trying to pull that information.
Awesome. And then the last thing I want to do, and we're going to move on from here, is just really talk about like what that means for the company. So does that mean now people at Embark are, going to have like a bunch of free time to like do whatever they want? Does that mean like what does it mean when we think about like the company getting a few extra hours back a day, multiplied by all the consultants employees that you have?
Yeah. Yeah. So the truth of it is, there is so much that's buying for our time that those hours, we never really see those in terms of idle time. We see that in terms of just increased opportunity to do more for our clients. So what maybe was going to require me to spend 48 hours in my week to get something done, now maybe I'm spending closer to 45 or 40 hours, and the goal there is to essentially try to provide more throughput and more balance for our consultants as they're going out to their clients every single day to deliver on these. Sometimes we see the art of the possible where our teams were not able to do something before. It just simply wasn't feasible without actually having to hire some outside resource. And I'll get into that in our demo here in a moment. But there are things that we do that are time savings that help us balance out how we actually deliver our projects in a timely fashion. And there are things that we do that enable us to do things that we couldn't do before.
And then I know that I said the last question, but the final one here, because I know this is like holy grail question, which everybody in your role or kind of analogous roles to what you do, Miles, is thinking about is like ROI with this stuff. How does that get kind of calculated, even if it's abstracted or some type of like process? How do you think about ROI when it comes to Gen AI at Embark?
Yep. So ultimately, the efficiencies that we see here get passed on to our clients. So where we can do a task more efficiently, that's time savings. Our clients see that, and so it's important to us to be able to track that because ultimately that affects the economics there, right? And we look at it in terms of what are these things that we're doing that are huge time savers and that are being done on a regular recurring basis and tracking them that way. So if you look at some of the popular use cases, the things that we've built apps for that apply to a large majority of the firm, and then look at the statistics on how often those are being leveraged and the assumptions around the average time saved, that's where we start to track things internally just to understand how much value have we provided for our clients through being a little bit more efficient with these tools.
That's amazing. And it's great that like not only do you guys get the internal benefit of like stronger efficiency, being able to work on things that maybe you couldn't work on before, but your clients are getting that benefit directly. That's like huge across the board. And again, speaks to the culture of Embark where it's happy customers or happy employees, happy customers, better business overall. So that's amazing to see. So moving
Hey,
over.
Sachin, Miles,
Yeah.
we got a question in the chat from Michael Hamby. I
Okay.
hope I'm pronouncing your name right. And the question is, as a point of reference, how are you defining AI apps from Power Apps in the Microsoft universe?
Thanks for the question. I think that'll become clear when we do the demo and how kind of we set up apps there. So we'll come back to that, Michael, when you see that live. And then if you further have questions around the differentiation, happy to take them. So yeah, so thinking about kind of businesses and AI overall, when we think about AI at Elvex, we think about it as not just, hey, is there like a single point solution that we need to buy software from? But we really think about it as a horizontal approach at Elvex. How can AI up level everyone at your company from the sales team, the marketing team, the consultants at Embark, administration, engineering, HR, because that is really the power of this, is that everybody can get extra hours back in their day to either spend and use more wisely, to do things more efficiently, or to be able to accomplish things that they normally couldn't do. And so we cut across all this stuff. And we think it's really important when you think about using an enterprise AI platform that you do think about a horizontal approach in addition to thinking about any of like the kind of point solutions that you might want to purchase software for, because that has the benefit of being connected to a bunch of different data that you need to power these things. And it has the benefit of having a single place to go to, almost like an AI HQ that you can go to really have all these different apps that are shared across the org. And again, that'll become clear in a second here. And so we decided at Elvex to really build the most secure, flexible, and effective platform out there. One that makes it easy for anybody to really build and use AI apps. You don't have to be technical to do it. And at the core has that fundamental security behind it where you feel comfortable knowing that, hey, if I do connect this to data, it is protected, or having the comfort of knowing that, hey, there's new models that are launching left and right. How do I make use of the latest and greatest? We act as an intermediary between all the models and the enterprise to allow this to happen. And so we see massive amounts of success happening across our customers. I would love to say that we take total credit for that, but that's not true. It's really companies like Embark that are taking a really proactive approach to how to roll this out, how to enable their team to use this, that makes this a really strong partnership for us. So when we think about working with companies, we think about it as a true partnership, not just, hey, go use our platform and services and you're off to the races. No, but let us like integrate with your AI steering committee. Let us talk to you about things that we've seen happen and be successful across our customer base. Let us bring that to the table with you. And so we've just seen that with our customers, that strong partnership be critical to the success of this. And so, yeah, again, for us, we sit in between the Gen AI models. So we are not building a model ourselves. We have no investment from any of the model providers. We really like to call ourselves independent from them. And that allows us to support all of the models that, are the ones that are going to be most used here, from OpenAI to Anthropic to Google to Mistral, Cohere, and even a whole host of the open source models that exist on the market today. We can help you set those up in a secure way and host those in a secure way so that they can be available to your enterprise overall. So we think that if you can make AI centralized, flexible, secure, and easy, then that really opens the door to the type of success that a company like Embark has seen with 72% adoption across their organization. So now, Miles, I want to come back really quick and talk about these things. I know we've like covered a few of these areas with, identifying the low-hanging fruit with your champions. We talked a little bit about the robust communication. I want to go into the app building competition. That is something that is unique to Embark. We've only seen like one or two other companies do that. So what really was the mindset behind this, and how did you guys roll out this competition?
Yeah, we decided to use the carrot method. So we threw some cash prizes out there for our consultants to say, all right, got a couple $100 for the people who can build the most creative, most useful apps that they can think of that might apply to themselves, that might apply to their team, might apply to the whole firm. But what we did was we time boxed it, and we did this towards the end of the year. It's a fun time with the holidays around, and we gave everyone a month, and we said, all right, you've got a month to submit your ideas and then build the app and submit it for testing. And so the AI steering committee managed that whole process. And as these applications came in, as people submitted their ideas and started building them, we ultimately judged them. And we looked at some different criteria. We looked at, is this an app that could be applicable to 2 people, 10 people, 50 people? How much time was spent on it. So we looked under the hood at the apps to look at the creativity. How well were the different rules set up? What kind of data sources did they build for the app to leverage? And then we put some various weights on each of those. And what it did was it got people excited. It got people excited to actually take an idea that they may have been thinking about and pondering on, but hadn't taken time to actually log in to LVEX and set it up and test it. And so it kind of lit a fire for a lot of people, and it made other people highly curious because people started to see their peers get recognized for some of these apps that they built. And they said, oh man, I had that idea, but I didn't submit it. And then other people said, well, that gives me another idea. And so it started kind of this momentum of people wanting to actually get in there and build apps because they started talking to their coworkers and realized how easy it was. And so we saw a big uptick in the number of apps that were built kind of in Q4 and even leading into Q1 of this year from that competition.
I actually don't know the answer to this question. I feel like I should, but what was like the couple apps that won? What were they doing? Are
Yeah,
we
so
demoing those today?
we are demoing one of them
Cool.
today, which is one of our NetSuite tools. But some of the other tools, some of the other apps that won, we had one that was designed to give feedback. So a lot of times, giving constructive feedback to your coworkers is hard, whether it's formal or informal. And one of our team members built an app that aligned to the framework that we use for our 360 peer feedback. And what it does is it allows you to put some basic notes and observations that you've seen in this person, and it will align that to our framework. So if you're actually building out some quarterly feedback, it makes it a little bit easier to take your thoughts and structure it in a way that's meaningful. If you are just trying to figure out how to approach a hard conversation, it gives you some pointers and some guidance and some things to make sure that you cover to make it constructive. Another tool was one of our sales prep tools. So imagine you're going in to meet with someone for the first time, potential client. Let's say they're the CFO of a mid-sized company, and you're trying to figure out, what are the things that I need to know about this company, about this person, to make sure that I am really well prepared for this conversation. And it will actually go and connect to the web and pull information, and it will outline some of the key notes that might be important to touch on or key questions to ask so that you come to that meeting well prepared and put your best foot forward.
That's awesome. And I guess the other kind of like relevant question here is, do you see yourself doing this again, like another app building competition, or is it kind of like that was enough? We feel like we got enough like excitement around it, and that's going to just organically kind of act as a flywheel.
It's a good question. We don't have one on the calendar as of right now, but I imagine we'll do something like that. And especially as we've gained this large amount of momentum, I think finding the additional fruit that's still hanging on the tree that we can go grab, the other areas that are untapped, I think something like another competition would be helpful to get people excited about creating more apps. I think we're also at a point where we're starting to look at the apps that we have created and really diving deeper on the metrics to understand who is using it, how they're using it, and going and talking with people and starting to really understand the value of those. How much time is that giving you back? And so that's another area of maturity for us, is getting into the metrics to understand where this is headed.
Amazing. So I think the two other areas that I want to go into here are the AI literacy and training and risk and data use framework, because those are kind of connected. Let's actually start with the risk and data use and then go into the literacy side. So how did you guys kind of approach risk mitigation with Gen AI? And then was there a certain process that you guys enabled? And we'll then talk about how you kind of like educated the company around that.
Yeah. So the first and foremost thing that we had to do was to make sure that people were not using the free versions of ChatGPT and some of the other popular models out there. And the reason being is that the free versions of those most often are not SOC 2 compliant. And for us as a consulting firm, and really for any business these days, being SOC 2 compliant if you're hosting other people's information is critical. And so we have a SOC 2 certification. We take that very seriously. And so we do everything possible to ensure that the company is operating daily in a way that's accretive to that. So for us, making sure that we had tools that were provided as firm tools that were SOC 2 compliant, and making sure people understood that firm data, client data only should live inside of those approved storage devices and processing tools was important. That's what led us ultimately to LVEX, was working with LVEX and working with the enterprise versions of the underlying models, is that we have that compliance and we have that security to make sure that data, as it's being stored, as it's being processed, we trust and know that that ultimately is safe, and it's not being used to train models. It's not being put in a place where some bad actor can pick that up. And so we just adhere to our SOC 2 compliance standards for our tool selection and the implementation there.
And then also like kind of related to risk, and I know this was a little bit more on the CIO's concern, but I'm sure this got broached with the steering committee. How important was it to be kind of model agnostic, so you weren't tying to a single model provider like an OpenAI or an Anthropic?
Yeah, it was important from the sense of the models are developing and evolving so quickly that the typical user, are the vast majority of our firm, does not want to keep up with trying to understand how to change their prompts as the models change, and as the models evolve, the prompts that are required to get a similar answer also evolve. And we wanted to abstract that as much as possible to make it really easy for users to go in there and get the results that they needed and not spend 15 minutes monkeying with a prompt. And so for us to be able to pull back from worrying about the brand new model that OpenAI came out with that Anthropic hasn't come out with yet, we now can flip flop between those as we please based on the use case. And we're no longer in a position where we have to worry how the individual models operate.
Awesome. And then the last thing here, and then we can move on to your demo, Miles, is just around how do you educate the firm about how to use Gen AI? What is like the literacy training here? I know you said there was a little bit of a process with rolling this out, and you know there was some internal knowledge base that was like shared. Can you talk a little bit more about that and what that process looked like?
Yeah, so we hit this from a couple angles. One, we did some knowledge share on our internal knowledge base website, and which we use Confluence. So we actually built out a lot of documentation on there that helps people understand how to get access, how to build apps, things to look for when you're testing your apps, what prompt engineering or building rules for these apps looks like. We also leveraged a lot of the content that Elbex actually helped us come up with that made it really easy for people to get a quick start, along with some of their content around app ideas and just giving examples for how to build some of these apps. And so we took a blend of in-house built material, some of the LVAX provided material, and we shared that with the firm, and then would kind of repost those on Slack periodically as a reminder. We also enabled our internal IT team to be kind of the back end support for this. So as people had questions, as they needed help with getting into LVAX or building an app, tried to lean on our internal IT to be able to go out there and spend some time with folks to give them some of the quick tips to get them started.
Amazing. And we already talked about KPIs a little bit in the other slides. So I think we can get into your demo. So the first demo here, and then I'm going to pass the screen share over to you, Miles, is really a technical accounting research tool. Do you want to briefly talk about it with the slide up, and then I'll pass the screen share over to you?
Sure. Yeah, so this our financial accounting team, they are the largest team at Embark. And like I mentioned earlier, it's really how Embark got started. And so this is an important area for us. A lot of the work that we do around technical accounting is very, very detailed in nature. Going through and referencing a lot of the big four accounting guides, FASB standards, to make sure that we're interpreting those correctly, that we're applying what the memos need to be and how we need to ensure compliance for our clients is important. And sometimes we find ourselves in really unique situations where we have a very niche reference within one of the guides that we need to make sure that we're in compliance with. And so looking through these guides and interpreting them is very time consuming. And so for us to be able to build an app that allows our consultants all the way from senior associates all the way up to MDs to be able to quickly and accurately interpret these is a huge time savings. And this is something that saves our guys, our teams, anywhere from 30 minutes to multiple hours at a time to be able to spend less time sifting through the code and more time understanding the code and then going back and fact checking and referencing it. And
Awesome.
so and so I will dive in a little bit more around how that kind of looks and works here for you. So under the hood here, what we did was we kind of uh, put a corral around the data and around this app, and we loaded some of those guides, some of those standards to allow for LVEX to really focus on the things that we just care about, which is I don't want it to hallucinate and make up an answer. I want it to actually go and look at and understand and cite its source within the documentation. And so, for example, here, I checked in with some of my BAS counterparts earlier and got a couple of prompts that they've used recently. So this prompt is, what are key considerations for an entity to go under GAGAS for the first year of audit in the accounting and finance function? And so what this does is it's going to go through and look at the different references. And then it's actually going to pull back some of those key considerations that are going to allow us to have an understanding of where to start. Like, how do we actually sit down and make sure that we're approaching this situation from the correct angle? And so from here, we can go in and understand, what it's pointing us to in terms of the yellow book, some of the ethical principles that are involved, and then going through the audit and planning and documentation process. and what that actually should look like. And so here we're just getting a quick high-level view of what these standards look like, what they dictate, and what our teams need to do in order to be compliant there.
Awesome. And it
Uh,
looks like for this, you had GPT-4 Omni powering this app in particular. The data source there in the top right that you have connected, is that like the proprietary Embark auditing principles? Is that right?
Yeah, we've got a little bit of both. So we've got some proprietary stuff in here. We also have some of the published Big Four accounting references,
Okay.
and then some of the FASB standards here. So if you've ever seen those books, they're huge, hundreds and hundreds of pages of accounting material. And so this makes quick work of going through all of those thousands of pages to be able to give somebody an overview.
And obviously you can't do this as an example, but is it fair to assume that like a user here would be able to apply like individual client kind of data and practices around here to be able to help
Yeah.
them construct that? I know this is like generic because you can't show that data, but is that applicable in this case?
It is, yeah. And so I made sure these were as vanilla as possible for privacy reasons. But yes, you can give really specifics about the client and the situation, and it will give you specifics back. So this one is meant to be just kind of a boilerplate question. But if we want to, dive in something a little bit more specific, here's an example where we're trying to understand the specifics for a hosting arrangement for a customer of a SaaS provider and capitalization of expenses here. And so we want it to summarize ASU 2018-15. And so this is an example where we've got a really specific situation that we're trying to understand how this would apply from a capitalization and software hosting. And so here it's actually going to kind of break down what we can capitalize and what we can't, as far as some of the early stages of the project, the application development, and the post implementation, and how we should look at that from the hosting perspective.
Amazing. Um, if you have more examples, feel free. If not, we can switch over to the NetSuite suite example from here.
Yeah, we can switch over to the NetSuite example. So let's see.
And so for Michael, the question that you had is just around the apps here. So like what Miles was doing here is basically switching between different apps that have been created at Embark. So the way that apps work inside of LVEX is they are custom apps, not dissimilar from a GPT, but with like additional functionality and obviously model agnostic. You can select the underlying provider here, and then also you can connect it to data sources of where we have integrations to things like Google Drive, Microsoft OneDrive, Dropbox, CRMs, etc., to connect it to the right data to power these apps. And then the other thing to note about kind of apps here is that they all kind of live in a centralized place within LVEX. So you can have an app that's private that only you have access to, or you can have an app that's public to the entire company. And so this is probably, yeah, so in the top left here, you can see this app is public to all of Embark. So anybody at Embark, when they log into LVEX, has access to this app to use for NetSuite purposes. So I'll let you continue from here, Miles.
Yeah. Yeah, to expand on that, I just want to emphasize the simplicity of creating these apps. Apps are not all made equal, and the amount of time and effort required to build them across different platforms. So Power Apps, for example, can sometimes require a decent amount of understanding of how the Power Automate, Power Apps platform works, and building in the functionality there. The apps in LVEX are about the easiest thing that I've ever experienced. It is, think of it like a way to put a wrapper or build a wrapper out of a really well-defined prompt. So if we have a really well-defined prompt that gives specific order and logic to the model, it's also telling it what data sources that you're going to provide it, and it's helping annotate those data sources. And you can then take all of that and that becomes the app. And so filling that out or creating that, filling out those different fields, it can be somewhere from like 5 to 10 minutes to create a pretty good app, or at least a first draft of an app. And so in less than 15 minutes, you can load the different data sources that you're trying to index and leverage from within the app, as well as define the parameters and how the app should work, and then start testing it. And so the speed to market there for us, like internally, to be able to create these different apps, deploy those out, is huge for us. Um, and just one more plug here. So I mentioned earlier that Sashin's team has helped us with a lot of the material to just make sure that people are well trained and understand how to leverage LBEX as much as possible. One other thing that they've done for us that's absolutely been huge is we have a Slack channel with them, their CTO, a lot of the members from our team that are active in LBEX. And periodically we come up with a technical error that we're not sure how to navigate, or we're building an app that we're not quite sure how to solution for it based on the type of data that we're trying to load, or we're doing something that maybe LVX hasn't done before, and we start talking to their product guys. Regardless, they will jump in and help us troubleshoot or plan for whatever it is that we're trying to do. And that's been really helpful for us, is not being left to our own devices, but we actually have somebody that's there that, within usually 30 minutes of a Slack message, there's a reply back to say, hey, send me a screenshot of that, or hey, let's jump on a really quick call because I want to understand more about your question. And so having that level of support has also been invaluable. But so here we are a NetSuite partner. So we do a lot of ERP selection, optimization, and implementation. And in NetSuite, when we are doing a more complex implementation and we're doing a lot of customization for our clients, there is code that has to be written and set into NetSuite in order for those customizations to take place. And a lot of our team understands the business processes and the configuration of NetSuite really, really well. We don't have a ton of full-on NetSuite developers on staff. And so what this tool allows us to do is, when we're going in and maybe we're troubleshooting a NetSuite environment that a client has that somebody else implemented, and we're trying to optimize it for them, we can leverage this to understand the code that already exists. We can also use this to troubleshoot or maybe even optimize the code that we're writing during an implementation. And so I've got a couple examples for you here. And again, these are real examples that I had the team provide, but in this case, we want to write a case formula for a saved search, which is basically going to do some sums on certain fields and subtract certain fields, namely the open PO amount from this. And it's going to store that as a value. And so we just ask it to create that for us. So here, the beauty of this is that I can use normal English language to tell it what I want it to create. And then from here, what it's going to do is actually going to write the script for us. And so now I can just copy and paste this into NetSuite, and I have my custom field that has the calculation. And this is really helpful because some of our folks are more well-versed in writing NetSuite code, some of them less so, but this levels the playing field for people to get the answers that they need without tying up our developers.
I love and Miho mentioned this in the chat, but I love how you can make it fun too. It doesn't just have to be like a dry script, right? So it's like totally dude, and then at the very end surfs up.
Yeah, it's great. So this is part of writing the app, is you can tell it what kind of tone and voice to have. So if you want it to be really casual, then you can prescribe that. If you want it to be more formal, you can also tell it to offer up disclaimers to things. For example, we have an app that I built that we trained all of our previous statements of work to enable our sales team and even our managing directors to draft future statements of work or ask questions about what we offer and examples of different projects that we've delivered. And one of the questions that we always get is, well, how much does that cost? And the typical answer is, well, it depends, right? And it depends on how much complexity there is, and what's in the scope, what's not in the scope. So we actually built in the app that no matter how hard you try to get a question answered around price from our internal teams, it won't give you the price. It says, hey, reach out to the team that owns this and have a detailed discussion with them. And so to be able to put those types of parameters in there makes it really, really helpful, because we can kind of prevent somebody from jailbreaking it. Here is another example. So here we're trying to create a concat function across multiple fields. And again, we just copy and pasted in the different fields here, comma delimited, and we want it to actually create a formula for these. So here it's using the pipes here, and a quick follow up with these colons that we just want to clean that up. We're just going to say that we want to adjust the layout of that. So now we turn that into a better case statement, cleaned it up a little bit with the delimiters that were in place. And now I can copy and paste this into NetSuite and be on my way.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Miles. These are like amazing examples. I know for the group here that might be a little bit in the weeds, but it's really important to recognize that this is like a thing that Embark has to go through time and time again with both of these examples. And so in aggregate, saves them a ton of time, saves them a ton of effort, and allows them to like have really good ways to drive that across the organization, especially when you're considering the level of adoption that they have. So we have a few minutes left here. I said that I would give people back some time. If people want to leave, they can. Otherwise, we're happy to stay on for a few more minutes now, answer any questions that you might have about LVEX, about Embark, about AI, about anything in between. And then I
Yeah,
guess,
and
yeah, go ahead.
so Shane, I was just going to expand on what you were talking about. One of the big things that I see that I think is kind of challenging for some in terms of figuring out how to get started is when you go out to the web and you look at all the marketing material for a lot of the use cases and the ideas and things are very generic, using it for marketing or writing emails. And a lot of people say, well, I don't need that much help. That won't save me that much time. So one of the reasons I wanted to demo these apps specifically is while they are super niche and may not apply to your job whatsoever, hopefully it does also help you understand the art of possible when it comes to applying this to things that are really niche, and being able to, whether it's interpreting regulations, legal code, or writing code, it is extremely applicable and flexible to adhering to whatever it is that you may be working on.
Totally agree. I'll just ask you, so those were examples of the consultants, what they're using at Embark. Like, what's your best example of using it? I guess personal or professional, Miles?
It's a great question. I think one of my most creative ones, this isn't necessarily one that I use every day, but we were working on extracting a lot of different processes and systems across multiple stakeholders to do a business impact analysis. And we had to do a lot of interviews and talk through and ask a lot of questions to a lot of people to come up with this master list of all the different processes and how do they depend on one another across the organization for their operations. What we did was we came up with a really standard set of questions, and then we recorded all of those meetings, all those interviews, and we built an app that then understood what it was looking for in terms of the different questions and responses for processes, dependencies, teams involved, technology involved. and it actually created a draft of the inventory of the business impact analysis for us by taking all the meeting transcripts and processing them. And it spit those out into an Excel file that was tabular. And we were then able to go through and start putting filters and going through and double checking that the results with the output was accurate according to our own notes. And that was one of our one of the really fun, most recent examples that we came up with something for that my team was working on.
Amazing. Well, I think that's probably it then. I don't see any questions in the Q&A. Doyle, did I miss anything? Just making sure.
No, I don't think so.
So I think we're good to go. Thanks everybody for joining again. And Miles, thank you so much for sharing. I appreciate your time so much. Like I said, this will be, the recording will be shared after this. So give us like a day or so and we'll get this out to all of you. Have a great week. Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.